When I was a kid, I loved stories. I loved hearing stories, but I specifically loved hearing people tell me a story. Books were good, TV shows, movies, they were all great, but I could sit and listen to some of my friends tell me stories what felt like forever. And not all of my friends could do that, but I wanted to learn how to do that. I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to be able to tell stories the way that they could capture my attention by just telling me a story. I didn't need the visuals. I just wanted to be engulfed in the thing they were doing. But as a kid, I was not skilled in that way. I still don't feel like I am many times. I didn't speak really well. I often mumbled, and even when I was really young, when I was in first grade, I was held back in first grade, not because of performance in my work or getting in trouble. I was literally held back in first grade because I didn't have friends. My teacher said I was too shy to move to the next grade, and they wanted me to repeat first grade so that I could just be a little more socially, get more friends and learn how to talk to other kids and how to interact with other kids. And growing up, that felt really weird to me, but it also just cemented that I'm not this person that can tell these stories. And as I got a little bit older, I found a group that I thought would have taught me how to tell those stories. I said, okay, here is the thing that's going to teach me. And that thing was theater. Many people I know might relate to that, where you go into theater and you think, I'm going to get the stage. I'm going to memorize these lines. I'm going to have all of the spotlight on me. I'm going to learn how to tell a story on stage in front of people. But I found something else in theater that attracted me more. I learned about backstage, and you could be backstage in theater and wear all black, and no one had to look at you, and you were invisible, but still helped create a story, helped create something behind the scenes. And that attracted me more than the stage. That attracted me more than I was still too scared to kind of get out there and be on stage. And I wanted to be just invisible behind the scenes. And I guarantee that led directly to me becoming a back-end engineer. At some point, those things kind of just made sense to me, that I was behind the scenes, that I was someone that was helping create something, but I was invisible. I was the one wearing all black. I was in the basement, and I didn't have to take the stage and have to be the one to present the story, because that was really scary. And as a back-end engineer, that eventually led me to a new job where on my first day, I walk into this building and I am so excited, because at this job is where I'm going to work with some of the best storytellers in the world. Disney Animation created some of my most beloved films and stories from my childhood that I still remember to today and knew then. And I knew when I started in that building, I had to learn from those storytellers. What was it that gave them the talent to tell those stories the way they did? And I walk into that building the very first day. I log into my computer, and there is a 10 a.m. meeting on my calendar already. First day on the job. And I thought it was a joke. The meeting said Big Hero 6. And the only thing I knew about Big Hero 6 was it was the movie we were working on at the time. I knew nothing about it. And I was like, okay. Talk to my manager and say, what's this Big Hero 6 meeting at 10 a.m.? He says, I want you to go watch the movie and learn how we create movies here, and learn how we create the film and the story. And I said, I don't know if you know, but it's not out yet. It's not ready. It's still in production. He's like, yes, I know. There's a theater in the lobby, and you can go watch the film. So this has to be a trick. There's no way I'm falling for that. I am not going to get in trouble on my first day. But he assured me it's 100% real. I should go watch the film. So I go and I sit in the theater and I watch the film. And I am completely blown away and amazed by how bad that movie is. I watched the movie. I was speechless. I do not know what to say right now. It's like, this movie has to come out in 6 months, and it's really bad. Like, I didn't know, probably one of the worst films I had seen to that point. And at the end of the screening, they handed me a piece of paper and they said, "Here you go. This is for your notes." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know where to start. My only inclination was to write, "You need to start over," because this was bad. I threw away the piece of paper and I didn't think about it. It's just like, I don't know what they're going to do, but I hope they can solve it. And 6 months later, the movie comes out and it wins an Oscar for Best Animated Feature Film. I hold that Oscar. That was the very first Oscar that I ever held. When you win the Oscar, they let you, everyone in the studio that helps create the film, you get to go and hold the Oscar, not on stage, but they bring it to you. And it was amazing. I was like, I do not know how they turned the thing that I saw in that screening to the thing that was actually created at the end. And I was like, these storytellers are amazing, because I don't know if they had like some rookie doing it at first, and then they just had pulled in the, the people that actually knew what they were doing. I didn't know what was going on, but I still had to figure this out. A short while later, I got to have lunch with Ed Catmull. And Ed Catmull was the president of Disney Animation, but he also created Pixar Studios with Steve Jobs and John Lasseter. It was Ed, John, and Steve. They created Pixar, and then John and Ed were the heads of Disney Animation. And I got lunch with him, and easily the smartest person I've met in person. And I'm just absorbing everything he's saying. And this man had been creating, he basically created how 3D rendering works, like back in the 60s and 70s, like just from scratch. I don't know how you thought of this stuff, but super insightful, obviously. And I asked him, what is the difference between Pixar and Disney? And he told me that when he came to Disney, which was a decade or so after starting Pixar, he said there was something really peculiar about how they created their stories. Because every movie has this timeline of when the story needs to be done. They have this moment that here's where we start and here's where we end. But at Disney, they had a moment in between. They had this marker that was just there that said, this is where the story has to reset. I don't know exactly where it is, but somewhere in here, the story's going to blow up and it's going to be terrible. And Disney expected it. Disney knew it was going to happen. And he said at Pixar, they had the same problems with story. Every movie had the same problem, but they didn't expect it. They weren't ready for it. They always fought through it. And they said, hey, we have to be able to get through this piece of story. It's just a piece that we can't figure out. But at Disney, they just said, hey, we're taking everything we learned about the story in this piece, and we're going to apply it to this other piece, but we're going to restart from scratch, and we're going to reevaluate what this story is actually about. And he said that was the biggest difference between Pixar and Disney when he came over. And I couldn't believe that these great storytellers would expect their stories to suck. They expected that at some point, they just were going to throw it away. All the work was just going to lead up to something new was going to emerge. I was like, that was amazing to me. And I didn't know how to reconcile that with my own ability to not even create the first part of the story, not even think of those stories, but then apply it and think, oh, if their story sucks, what am I going to do? A little while after that, I get another meeting on my calendar. And this meeting says, Ralph Breaks the Internet story. Like, I don't know what that means again. I go and ask my manager. And he says, the movie Ralph Breaks the Internet we were working on at the time, the story department needs your help to craft part of the story. No way. This is out of the question. I am not a storyteller. This movie is going to fail. If anything depends on my ability to tell a story, we are done. We just have to shut down the studio. It had a good run. It's almost like 100 years now, but we're done. But I go to the meeting anyway. I'm there with the producers, the writers, the directors for Ralph Breaks the Internet. I sit down and they say, we need you to tell us how the internet works, how viruses work, how malware works, so we can craft that into the story. I was just, well, I know how that stuff works. I don't know how you're going to use it in this story, but let's figure it out. It's probably a 3-hour meeting. And to this day is the best meeting I've ever had in my life. I came out of that meeting so excited for what the story was going to be, so excited for what they were going to do with the information, whether they used it or not. But the fact that they wanted to learn so much more about how to be accurate in their storytelling blew me away to say, okay, the thing that these people actually have, the talent in this building, yes, there are very talented storytellers, but the thing that allows them to do what they do consistently over and over again is the process of storytelling. They know the elements, they have ideas, but the process they go from the beginning to the end is the piece that actually helps them make amazing stories. My time at Disney was fairly short because I knew I had to go back to telling stories. I had to find a way to tell my own stories. And that's when I shifted into a developer advocacy role. I like doing back-end engineering, but I knew I still wanted to craft those stories. I still wanted to help people with stories, writing software and putting it together to understand how things work. And so that's where I switched out of becoming a back-end engineer full-time and saying, I need to go back to telling these stories. And now I have some of the information, some of the tools to know it's okay if my stories suck. And it's okay if I don't know the answer to how to put the beginning and the end together. But the process that I learned through working at Disney, multiple books and workshops and talking to more and more people is what actually is helping me create a story to finally become a storyteller. And that's why I'm here. That is why I'm here today, to help you also learn that you are a storyteller and you have amazing stories. And there is a formula and process that you can do to create your own stories. You can go ahead and share the screen now. Thank you. So we have limited time, and I'm going to stick to just some of the things that have helped me elevate my stories the fastest with just going from scratch. And yet again, process, having stories, collecting stories, all these things matter. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. But I'm just going to go over some of the basics here. What actually makes a good story? What makes a better story? If you only have one thing to add to every story, is conflict. Conflict is the thing that you're fighting against, the thing that you're overcoming. And a lot of people think like, oh, well, I need big conflict. I need something that is huge and crazy. And like movies are always like the end of the world or end of humanity or something is going on. Like, no. Conflict can be really small. Conflict can be just very small things. And some story writers say that the thing that you do to add conflict is you use the word but. That's it. You don't have to have this amazing, you just say like, I was doing a thing, but this other thing happened. This was the state of the world, but I can't do that anymore. That adds conflict. That one word right there is your conflict. Add conflict first. If you only add one thing to a story to make it better, add some conflict. If you're going to add two things to a story, add change. A change in yourself is almost always the change that you're looking for. Pretty much every good story, every major movie has arcs of heroes, of people, but there's a main character and there's a change that happens for them. And a lot of times it's a really short, it's a 5-second change. It happens in a moment where all of a sudden they realize that they are someone else. They are someone different because something happened. They overcame something and they were something before, and now they are something different. That change is a direct correlation to the conflict. They had to make a decision to overcome the conflict, but the actual thing that matters is how they changed. That's how you relate to people. I don't always relate to the conflict. I relate to how someone changed. I wasn't a storyteller before, but now I am. The third thing, this is it. The three things that you need. Stakes. Why is that change important? Why is the thing that you changed? Why is the conflict you overcame? Why is that important? I can change who I think I am, and it's not important. There's no stakes. I decided I wanted to have cereal for the rest of my life for breakfast instead of eggs. I don't know. It doesn't matter, right? Like that change, I can say like I changed who I was because I changed my diet, but there's no stakes. There's no reason that that's important. And having stakes is usually the hardest thing and usually a personal thing. But the stakes are the piece that give me emotional connection to how and why the change happened. Let's go through an example of a story that many of you might be familiar with and see how it relates to these three things. Love this story. Original Jurassic Park. Not the book. I'm just talking about the movie right now because it's one that more people kind of relate to. But what's the story about? Lots of people will say dinosaurs, right? Like it's about dinosaurs, right? That's what it's about. Kind of. There's a main character in it, Alan. That's what the story is actually about. What's the conflict in the story? Let's look at that first. What is the conflict? Not a trick question. The conflict is dinosaurs. They might be eaten if they don't get over this change, if they don't figure out what it is that how they have to change. So that's the conflict they're overcoming. Everyone in the story deals with it differently, but we're going to focus again on Alan as the main character of the story. What is the change that he goes through? And I can represent this entire arc of this character and the change that happens in 3 screenshots. Okay. First of all, Alan, beginning of the movie, what is he doing? He's a paleontologist. He digs up dinosaur bones and he doesn't like kids. He scares this kid with his raptor claw. He says he doesn't want kids, right? No, never will he want one, saying to, his girlfriend, you want one of those? She's like, well, not that one. Like, he does not like kids and he likes his work. That is what he wants to do. Turns out dinosaurs are alive now, and the work he's done is a little less relevant. He might need to find a new job. That is one thing he has to overcome. But the second thing he has to overcome is he has to decide that he actually likes kids. He loves these kids. This scene, he's in the tree, Brachiosaurus around him. He's looking at that same claw. At the beginning of the movie, he's scared that kid with. He's looking at it with these 2 kids around his arms. He just rescued them from a T-Rex and electric fences. And he throws the claw. He doesn't need it anymore. That's not his job anymore. His job is irrelevant. These kids are what matter. This life is what matters. He hated kids at the beginning, and now he goes through this. End of the movie, to complete the arc, again, same thing. He intentionally, these kids are here, and he is happy with these kids. They have escaped. They are safe. He is happy. He's looking over at his girlfriend at the time. He's like, this is what life was about. This was how he's changed. His 5-second moment of change was in that tree. And what are the stakes? Right? Like that's the third piece here. Like, why do we care that Alan changed? It was his job, the love of his life, his girlfriend at the time, and his happiness as a human being. This is why this mattered to him. Dinosaurs were great. That was a situation. We all go to see the dinosaurs. It was an amazing conflict. We don't relate to the conflict. No one else here is like, yeah, that time I fought dinosaurs. Yeah, it was a difficult time in my life. I had to change because of no. The conflict and situations are entertaining. It goes situation to situation. It just carries the story along of who is Alan becoming. There's someone else in the story that also was in the movie and didn't change. The hunter. I don't even remember his name right now, but he is like, I know how these velociraptors work. I know everything about them. I've been learning about them. I am a hunter. And he did not change. He went to hunt them in the jungle. And what happens? They outsmart him, right? The line, clever girl. That's when he changed too late. He noticed that he thought he was an amazing hunter and he was better than all these animals. And he knew better. And then he realized he had to change. If he would have changed, he probably would have survived. But his arc did not complete. He did not change. That's how you can take something like, I learned to love kids. What was the situation that brought me into this moment of, I love kids? Might be a new parent. Might have been a car accident. Might have been something in your life that you did that was a little different. Again, not dinosaurs, doesn't matter. You can still relate to this movie with the emotion and the arc of that change. So again, just back to this. I'm already like at time, and there's so many things we can talk about with stories. Please answer your questions. These are the 3 things you need. If you can take any moment in your life, any time that you felt like you changed as a person, figure out these 3 things and then collect that story. Figure out when you changed, and then figure out what conflict you overcame that drove that change and why that change was important. If you have those 3 things, you can make very memorable stories, and you can tell those stories to other people, and they will also relate to you. People are amazing at being able to find patterns and match those patterns and be able to figure out why it is that, oh yeah, I do that too. And you can tell your own story in your own way with these 3 things, and your stories are going to be so much better.